Hi everyone, it's Sean from What Up, and welcome back to another video, and this will be my breakdown of Season 2, Episode 6 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. Now, I think in a large part of the fandom's opinion, this was likely the best episode of the season, and there is a lot to unpack. There's a ton going on here. There are a number of parallels to things that are happening in the book series, as well as direct references to them. We're going to cover each and every one of those today, and we're going to break down every scene and try to explain where the characters are at and where they're going in this particular episode. Now, if you're new to the channel and you don't know what we do here, we cover Wheel of Time show news, pretty much anything and everything related to the Wheel of Time. Right now we're doing reviews, Easter egg videos, and breakdowns for every single episode of Season 2. When Season 2 finishes, we're right back to doing leaks, rumors, and news about Season 3. And I do have a ton of stuff for you folks, and I'll be releasing it over the next month or two. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so, because you're not going to want to miss out on a bunch of the Season 3 news that's coming. Alright, all of that being said, I do have to give a bit of a spoiler warning before we dive into the video, so spoiler warning. If you've not seen the first season of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, that's episodes 1 through 8, and have not seen the first 6 episodes of Season 2, and have not read the entire Wheel of Time book series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, that's The Eye of the World, all the way through A Memory of Light, be forewarned, I may ruin plot points and character arcs from both of those mediums. Alright, let's get on to the breakdown. Alright, in the opening scene, we learn a ton of stuff about the Seanchan. We learn a ton of stuff about how they're going to fit into the world and how they treat people who can channel. And I think we get a very good overview of their intentions. Now, these scenes, this storyline between Egwene and Rhaena, the Sul'dam, for the entire episode, Rafe Judkins has gone on record during a Q&A and as well as in a couple other spots and said it was inspired by a single paragraph in The Great Hunt. You know, in that paragraph, Egwene tries to use the water pitcher as a weapon and ends up dealing with the consequences. That was stretched out over this whole episode. Normally, I would say a paragraph for an entire storyline and episode, probably not the greatest idea, but this was perfect in my opinion. In other words, they were able to use something brutal and simple to explain almost every aspect of the Seanchan culture when it comes to channelers in this particular episode, while making you hate them at the same time. Like, it was just masterful. So in this scene, we learn a couple of different things. We learn about the Adam and how it works. We know that Egwene can't touch it. She can't go near it. She can't think about touching it. We learn that the Sul'dam has complete and utter control over the damane. They can do pretty much whatever they want. They can give them pain. They can make them happy. They can force them to do what they want through coercive means. And they can't be injured by their damane, because anything a damane does to them basically goes back on them 1,000-fold. So this is the whole storyline throughout the entire episode. And although it's not 100% book accurate, like not pulled word for word from the page, like I said, they took that paragraph and they used it in a masterful way to tell the story about the Seanchan for this whole episode. And I thought it was absolutely really well done. Next, we cut to Lanfear and Rand in Tel'aran'rhiod, Rioid, the World of Dreams, and this is probably some of my favorite interactions so far in the show. Essentially, what we're getting here is we're getting the scenes between them where Rand starts calling her out. So he doesn't believe that she's there to do anything nice for him, obviously, because she's a Forsaken. But just like in the books, Lanfear was always there to lend a helping hand here and there. She even helped him in the Stone of Tyr when they were taking over the Stone of Tyr, when there were tons of different Trollocs and Shadow Spawn in the Stone. She had her own there, assisting Rand's fighters. Like it was kind of weird, and throughout the entire series, she did that. She would bounce back and forth between hate and love for Rand because he was Lews Therin and he wasn't Lews Therin. As he started gaining more memories, she started really kind of leaning into it. And this is the start of that here. So what we see is we see her manipulating Rand by telling him he's being manipulated by someone else. We all know that Two Rivers folk are incredibly stubborn. I think the saying is they can teach lessons to stones. And when they're being told to do something or they're being manipulated, they tend to dig their heels in and just stop. So Lanfear here is masterfully, in my opinion, manipulating Rand by telling him that he's dancing on Moiraine's strings and he should just do what she says instead, while referencing Lews Therin. So she's trying to break him down and kind of bring him back over to her side. Now, this is all leading up to them working together here and there, which happens in the book series. She shows up a number of different times, and it wasn't until much later when she really realized that Rand would never be on her side or be with her that she really went full Forsaken, so to speak. But we're still in that early stages of the relationship where she thinks she can win Rand over, and we get to see that in almost every interaction they have on screen. And here, she's still trying to cut out that Aes Sedai influence and keep him isolated on his own so she can still control him. All right, next up, we get our little taste of Mat for the episode. We don't have a whole lot of Mat in this season so far, and I'm hoping we get some more of him as time goes on. Perhaps I'll focus a bit more on him in season 3, maybe? I think so. Now, this scene is sort of a call-out, and I think it's direct foreshadowing to things that we may see later on, in the fact that in the book series, there were big puppet shows in the Foregate, and these puppets were supposed to be Trollocs. And there was a couple of different times when people had said in the books that, oh, they don't look like Trollocs, they don't know what they look like, and I think it was the Shienarans that actually said it. Then later on, at dusk, when there was an attack in the Foregate by Shadowspawn, the Trollocs that were there were disguised as puppets. So I think that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing these puppets on purpose, because maybe later on we'll actually see the Trollocs show up as puppets. I'm not 100% on that. Either that, or it's a nice call out to things that happen in the books. Either way, what we see here is we see Mat and Min actually arrive in Cairhien, and Mat's excited. He's happy to be there, and he's thanking Min because he thinks it's a really great, fun place to be, and Min just seems conflicted. So, Min's another character that's been changed a little bit from the book series, and we have not seen her on screen very much at all. In fact, I think out of the central characters to the plot line so far, she's probably the person with the least amount of screen time. And her motivations are very early from the book series. So essentially, when she was young in the book series, off page, it wasn't even part of the story, it happened pre-story, she wanted to get rid of her gift, and she would have done anything desperately to do it, because every time she told somebody something, it seemed to make things worse or cause it to happen. So she learned at a very young age that she shouldn't talk about her gifts at all, but she desperately wanted to be rid of them. They really leaned into that in the show, and they've made it so that she has to do things to get rid of it. Do I think that she's going to be a dark friend of the show? No, I don't believe so. Do I think that she's going to be doing this for multiple seasons? I also don't think so. I think she was a plot device used to get Mat to Cairhien because he had to be there for the rest of the story so we could get to Fallen later on. And this was the easiest way to do it, by referencing things that happened early on in her story. I think at some point or other she's going to say no to the Chosen and not go along with their plans, and they're going to give up on her. Either way, a really nice little call out to the books by seeing these puppets that look nothing like Trollocs. All right, next up we get to see Elaine and Nynaeve talking with Rima of the Yellow Aja and her warder. Now, this scene is really important in setting up a ton of different things. This Aes Sedai was in the book series, however, she was already captured when we met her for the first time, and she basically was the one that begged Egwene to remember her real name because she was given a new name. Remember in the last scene with Egwene where they said that Egwene's a fine name and she can keep that? Well, it's because the damane usually have their names changed by Sul'dam, and there is a bit of discussion among other Sul'dam and how they should treat the damane, and usually some of them like to change the name completely to break any aspects from their former life. Now, in this particular scene, we get to finally confirm that Liandrin is Black Aja, that she is a dark friend. We've all known that, who've read the books for quite some time, and those people who've never read the books but are just watching the show probably at the very least really suspected at this point, but it wasn't actually laid out plain as day like it is in this particular scene. Now, what's really interesting about this is this also starts the groundwork for explaining what the Black Aja is. It's an Aja dedicated to the Dark One. The three oaths do not apply. It's something I don't think was ever implicitly said on screen so far, which means that now some of the audience members who have never read the books may be looking for lies, maybe looking for inconsistencies, maybe looking for things that count as breaking the three oaths. A lot of people, myself included, either reading the series or rereading the series, I did that while reading, and now I'm doing it while watching the show. And it's really interesting because a lot of these inconsistencies can be explained away due to a lie is not a lie if you believe it, change in circumstance. There's all kinds of things that are kind of in the gray area of this, which I think is going to make this kind of Easter egg hunt for Dark Friends of Black Aja on the screen just as fun as it was when we read through the books for the first time. Next, we get to see Liandrin with Lanfear on screen. So we just learned that she's Black Asha for sure because it was mentioned. And then we see Liandrin with her boy. Now, this is one of those changes from the book series that I really enjoyed, and I think that they should do more of. Essentially, in the book series, Liandrin's main motivation for becoming Black Asha is that she was poor, she was treated differently, and she wanted power. And that seemed to be a major similarity between most people who turn to the dark. In reality, that's not how most people are, and a lot of the villains in the book series, at least some of the minor ones, or even some of the major ones, seemed very 2D. I said this on the channel before, they didn't seem really fleshed out. There's only a couple of them much later on in the series that really felt like true, full, well-rounded characters that you understood their motivations, and you actually felt something for. Liandrin was not one of those characters throughout the book series. She was just sort of a plot device put in place to do bad things because she was a bad person. Now, with this, we get to see that the only man in her life that she really cares for is her son, and she turned to the dark basically to try to keep him alive. At this point, Lanfear shows up and takes that choice from her, calls it a weakness, and says, I'm going to do for you what you cannot do, and kills her son. So now we have a Liandrin who has no real reason to be with the dark, but she's already in too deep. So I think we're going to see, instead of her feeling bad about some of her actions, which we've seen with taking Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine to the Seanchan and doing a few other things here and there, there's always been a hint of, I'm doing this for the right reasons. It's a bad thing. I'm doing bad things, but I'm doing bad things for, in my mind, what are the right reasons? She no longer has those right reasons. I think she's going to start doing bad things just for the sake of being bad. She's already well-rounded. We know her backstory, and now she can really lean into being a dark friend of Black Asha. And I really hope that we get to see her for quite some time, and she takes the place of a number other of Black Asha in the books, because they all pretty much had the same motivations, power. And that was it. There are some who had different things, but mostly it was power, and a lot of them are really forgettable. So far, Liandrin is not a forgettable character at all. I think they've done a very good job of making her better. Next up, we get a scene with High Lady Suroth and Loial, as well as Ingtar. Now, Loial and Ingtar haven't been in the series a whole lot after they've been captured, but essentially, we learn now that they're property and that she uses them basically for entertainment. So, when she asked Loial to sing here, the Seanchan know a lot about Ogier. So Ogier are in Seanchan. Ogier tend to have all of the same abilities there as they did in the Westlands, or in Randland, as it's affectionately called. So tree singing, which we're getting introduced to here on the screen, is not an unknown talent to the Seanchan. And I don't believe that in this scene, High Lady Suroth thought that Loial could do it. I thought that she felt bad about herself for the things that are happening, and she wanted to see someone fail and be embarrassed, because it is such a rare talent. And that would make her feel better about herself, because that's basically what High Lady Suroth is. She's a petulant child who is also a dark friend that wields immense power. Now, here, Loial kind of calls her bluff, and he does do tree singing on screen, which I thought was very neat. It's a little call out. There's a couple of things that happen in the books. Tree singing is not a massive part of the books, but it's mentioned a number of different times, and in fact, in The Great Hunt, Loial actually does sing to the trees to make a weapon, a big quarterstaff that he uses, and it was done in the Mirror Worlds when Rand and Huron and Loial were kind of zipped over there, and at the time, he said that the earth, the tree, and everything combined was happy that he had made a weapon, and it made him very sad. So we didn't get to see that because we didn't see the parallel worlds, but we are seeing tree singing here, so now it is ingrained in the audience's mind that it is a talent that Loial has, and you also get to see exactly how shitty Suroth is, because she tries to embarrass him, and then when he succeeds, she brushes it off like it's nothing and sends him away. Alright, now we're back to Egwene and Rhenna, the Sul'dam, and in this scene, this is where we really get to see that water pitcher scene, where Egwene picks up the water pitcher and uses it as a weapon. Now, when she does that, and she thinks of using it as a weapon, she can't touch the water pitcher for the rest of the entire episode until she no longer thinks of it as a weapon, no longer wants to hurt Rhenna with it, and when that happens, it's a symbol that she's been completely broken. Not 100%. Egwene in the book series was incredibly tough, but the Seanchan did break her to a degree, and she never fully recovered from it. And we get to see a lot of payback from that much later on in the series. So in these scenes here, like I said, Rafe Jenkins read that one paragraph from The Great Hunt and stretched out over the entire episode. And this is the moment when Egwene thinks of that water pitcher as a weapon, and then from this moment on till the very end of the episode, she can't even touch it because it's something she considered hurting her Sul'dam with. Now we shift to Lan, Alanna, Maxim, and Ivan, and this storyline is pretty interesting in the fact that it takes a bunch of different storylines from the book series and kind of crams them all together, so we get a lot of character growth from Lan very, very early on in the series, rather than stretched out over, say, 5 or 6 books, and in this case, maybe a couple of different seasons. So at this point, we know that Lan believes that Moiraine has been stilled. We know that Moiraine also believes the same thing, and they think the bond has been severed, but he's not feeling all the regular ill effects of a warder who's lost the bond. So he's been given to Alanna for her to watch over, and during this time frame, he's still thinking, working, and worrying about Moiraine the whole time. He's still being a good warder to her, even though he's not with her. Alanna, Maxim, and Ivan had found the note about Lanfear, and they jumped to what would only be considered as a natural conclusion, that perhaps Lan is a dark friend. Yes, we know that Lan, there's no way he could be a dark friend. He's the uncrowned king of Malkir. His whole family and country were destroyed by Shadowspawn and treachery. He spent his entire life fighting the Shadow and the Blight, like a war that no one can win. Just so he could die to be with the rest of his people. That doesn't mean anything, really, because, let's face it, dark friends have come from stranger circumstances in the books. So it's not totally unbelievable that Lan could be a dark friend, at least to Alanna and Ivan and Maxim, her warders. So this is a confrontation where you actually get to have them accuse him of it, and then he just kind of spills his guts. He's like, no, I have to tell you some things. And this is when he tells them everything. So he tells them about the journey, the quest to find the Dragon Reborn. He says he has to find the Amyrlin. He needs to talk to her. So he involves Alanna much earlier on. Now, this doesn't really happen in the book series. Lan doesn't confide in Alanna. In fact, Alanna has nothing to do with Lan at all. Alanna's taking the place of another Aes Sedai who had taken over Lan's bond when he had it actually severed in the books. But because Alanna is taking the place of a number of different Aes Sedai, it's not totally outside the realm of possibility that she's going to be involved in knowing about the Dragon Reborn much earlier. And in fact, I think we're going to need to have that happen. You're going to need to have a number of Aes Sedai, Varen, Alanna, and Moiraine, all knowing about the Dragon Reborn, so they can be in different sections of the world, assisting or helping him as he kind of travels around. You remember, traveling will happen at one point or another, which is the ability to basically transport yourself from one place to another instantaneously, but not all Aes Sedai can do it, and Rand does it at will very early on in the series. Next could be another dream sequence with Rand, Ishii, and Lanfear, and actually Lanfear does use that name, which is a bit of fan service. A lot of the fandom, for those of you who are not aware, call Ashamael Ishii and have for years. It's not a proper name used in the books at any point or another, but a little call out to the fandom that calls him that. And this is where we get to see Lanfear giving Rand some things. Basically, she's manipulating him even further by giving him what he wants. Takes him to go see Egwene, shows where she's at, shows where Ashamael is. Lanfear wants him to go to Falm. Lanfear wants him to proclaim himself because she wants the dragon. That's what she wants. Her motivations are, in the book series and in the show, not exactly in alignment with the Ashamael's or any of the other Forsaken for that matter. They're all kind of working against each other, which we see here. It seems to be that Lanfear really does work against Ashamael a fair bit, in small ways. And that's because she did in the book series. She really just wants Rand. That's her whole purpose. It's her whole being. She wants to be with the dragon because she is utterly obsessed. And in doing so, she tends to screw up a lot of the other Forsaken's plans, just to move pieces around to be at her advantage. Now, she wants to rule with Rand at her side, her as nae'blis, which is the top chosen, and Rand as just slightly below her, because no one can be above her, and that's her main goal. So she is going to actively undermine the other chosen, which we get to see here, because she basically shows Rand some things that, in Rand's mind at least, Ashamael doesn't want him to know, although maybe they've planned this together. I want to talk about this scene next, and this is Moiraine writing a letter to Siuan, and that is what a lot of people thought was the confirmation that she's been stilled on screen. Now, we know that's not the case. However, this goes back to the three oaths. Moiraine still can't lie. When you lose access to the one power and you're actually stilled in the book series, the oaths are broken because they require somebody's ability to channel to stay on them. So when you get stilled, which happened to a few people in the book series that were Aes Sedai, that they followed around for a little while, they can lie, they can do anything against the three oaths. People don't know that, though, because they don't normally study women who have been stilled or can no longer channel. So what we're seeing here is Moiraine still has access to the three oaths. She still has to be telling the truth. And she's writing she's been stilled to Siuan. And when she does so, she's not really breaking the three oaths. She's still, at this point, absolutely believes she's been stilled, even when she really hasn't been at all. Kind of a neat little trick here to kind of push some of the fandom into the whole, okay, she's actually been stilled theory that's been going around for some time, even though most of the fandom pretty much agrees that she has a shield tied off on her at this point. Then we jump into this. Lord Barthane's bringing Moiraine a sandwich. She doesn't eat it, of course, and she kind of makes him feel bad about it. But what's really interesting about this is in the book series, Barthane's is a dark friend. He 100% is. In the show, there are little hints to that effect. He's buttered his bread on both sides, for example, is a huge little hint to that. Huge little hint? That really doesn't make any sense, but it is a hint to that because he's basically playing both sides against one another. I thought it was really a very neat, tiny little bit of foreshadowing. But at this point, you have to wonder, is his mother in on it too? Because she seems to be pushing really hard for her son, which any mother would do. However, is it because she's against Moiraine? Is it because she loves her son? Or is it because she's actually a dark friend as well? At this point, we get a little bit more interaction between Rand and Logain, and this is Rand basically needing and wanting to control the power. He has to learn how to use it to be able to save Egwene and fight the Forsaken. And Logain has a talent with a capital T in the show that he didn't have in the book series. Essentially, they changed a couple of different things here. So, Logain has been gentled. He no longer has the ability to channel, but he has a talent to be able to see people who can channel, men especially, and their weaves. So it doesn't matter if he can no longer channel, the talent still exists. So he's able to see the weaves, he is able to see what Rand is doing, and they've kind of played this off as a major thing. So it is a shift from how the power works in the books a little bit, and they're using it as a plot device that he can still teach Rand. Now, there's a ton of theories in the fandom that Logain may actually take over as Rand's teacher in the show, rather than one of the fallen chosen, Asmodean, that we got to see in The Shadow Rising. However, we think Asmodean is still in the show because we've seen the statues of the Forsaken. So, will Logain teach Rand? I'm not 100% on that, but I do think that certain elements of the story are going to accelerate much faster because Alvaro Morte, the actor who plays Logain, is an incredibly huge actor. He is massive. I would say he is arguably one of the most famous people in the cast, bar none, and he's an amazing actor. They're going to want to utilize that more often than not. So I don't think Logain's just going to go away. I think we're going to start seeing more and more of Logain, and maybe, just maybe at some point or another, he will start to teach Rand, and Asmodean will be there in another capacity. I'm not 100% on that. But either way, a whole lot of speculation on what his role is going to be going forward. Next up, we have the reunion everybody's been waiting for, Rand and Mat, and this is heartwarming, especially considering the fact that we got to see Donald Finn really play Mat for the first time with one of his friends from the Two Rivers. We see a lot of the humor shine through and whatnot, and this is not dark Mat so far. So in other words, he is not really under the influence of the dagger at this point. Not totally anyway. And him and Rand seem to get along. I think we're going to start seeing him pushed more and more to be under the influence of the dagger much later, so he can be healed again in the tower. But right now, it's just a nice little scene where they actually meet up with one another, and there are hints that Mat is not all right. He asks about Egwene. He had just seen her in the tower and left her there when she was upset. He ignored that fact. He makes fun of Rand, so he is totally old Mat at the same time. But there are little hints that there is some sort of thing that is not quite right with Mat right now. And we get to see that much later on in the episode as well, when he decides to not join Rand when Rand tries to leave. Something that so far Mat's been really good at in the series, just not going with his friends and doing things that they need for help. Now we jump back to Nynaeve, Elaine, and Aes Sedai of the Yellow Aja, and this is where we get something that could be incredibly important to plot devices much later on in the book series. So the fact that they changed the Aes Sedai rings does change a few things for how certain plot lines are going to work out later on. So Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene all pretend they're full sisters at one point or another, multiple times actually, throughout the story, and they do so by basically shifting their Great Serpent Band off of the ring finger, or the finger that the Accepted wear it on, to any other finger, because Aes Sedai wear it anywhere they want and Accepted wear it in one specific spot. When they do so, they get their rings when they're accepted. There's no stone to tell what Aja they are. The rings are a little bit different. So all the way back in season 1, I've always been speculating on how they're going to do that. Nynaeve just got a handful of rings. It included a yellow ring, a couple of green rings, a brown ring, a blue ring. There are other rings there, so they can actively use these rings, probably in season 3, when they do the Chanchicho plotline and other plot lines that involve them portraying themselves as full sisters, to kind of pass themselves off on that. Kind of a touching scene here, because Aes Sedai knows that she's going to be captured or killed here, and she's giving up these rings as a way for Nynaeve to take them back to the tower and melt them in the flame. Now we're back with the scene with Egwene and her Sul'dam Rana, and it's one of those scenes where it's taken from the books. This actually does happen in a certain way, but it showcases a couple of different things and gives some foreshadowing to the fans. So essentially, at this point, she is not totally submitted yet. She's not totally broken, but she is doing some of the training. And when they're doing the training, the Sul'dam mentions how good it feels to be complete. They're actually linked and complete now. Now, for those of you who may not know, the Adam is basically forcing an involuntary circle between Egwene and the Sul'dam, because Sul'dam are women who can learn to channel, but they never actually actively pursue it, because channeling's a terrible thing in the Seanchan culture. So because they can learn, they can form that circle, that forced circle, so to speak, with a woman born with a spark, and use their power. Now, there are some Sul'dam in the book series, especially much later on, that you find out have seen the weaves. They tend to know what their damane is doing, and they say it comes with experience. But it's because they've started to learn and just slightly flex the muscles that use the one power, and that's what we're seeing here. Sort of a hint to the fans that this is happening, all while Egwene is showcasing powers that normally women don't have. She's very strong with earth and fire, which women normally aren't in the book series, and we get to see that in this particular scene. All right, now we're back with Mat and Min, and this is kind of an interesting scene, because this is the first scene that I really thought that there's something more to this storyline than meets the eye. So essentially, at this point, we think that Min is taking Mat to Cairhien just to get her visions, and that's it. Whether Mat's going to be kidnapped in Cairhien, whether something's going to happen, we really don't know why he's being taken there. We just know that Min is taking him, and she's doing it at Shamiel's bidding, so it's obviously not a good thing. But I think this whole time Min is taking him there just so Mat can be betrayed or feel betrayed one more time. Because pretty much anyone he's ever counted on his whole life has given up on him, has treated him poorly, and that started with his family in this TV series, and then it moved on to Rand when Rand left. When he was really under the influence of the dagger, he left his friends behind because he was thinking that they weren't going to help him out. And this is, again, I think, leaning into that, because in this scene, he basically feels like Min has betrayed him. So he's losing another person that was close to him, another person that trusts him, and it's pushing him just a little bit further into the dagger's influence. Remember, he hasn't been fully healed yet, so he is still feeling the effects of the dagger, and they seem to be slightly increasing as this season goes on. Now, we don't have Mat a whole lot on screen, but there are subtle changes between early season Mat and now, and I think by the end of the season, he'll actually have his dagger. Will he stab Rand? I don't know. There's a ton of theories out there that say that maybe it'll be Fane using the Mask of the Mirrors, like to be look like Mat that stabs Rand, but I think this is pushing Mat towards it. I think Mat's actually going to stab Rand and give him one of those wounds that can't heal on purpose, but maybe not for the reasons we have, or the reasons we think we have. Either way, it's really interesting to see this dynamic where they're breaking Mat down, because a big theme of the books is isolation, making people not have friends, not have family, pushing people away to make them hard, to make them dark, and that brings them further and further under the Dark One's control. It happened a lot with Rand in the book series, happened a little bit with Rand, or with Mat and Perrin rather, and this is, I think, a theme they're really leaning into with Mat in the show. Now, when the Amyrlin arrives in Cairhien, she brings with her 14 Aes Sedai. Now, 14 is a pretty important number because you need at least 13 Aes Sedai to hold any man who could channel in a circle. There's nothing they can do to stop that. And having 14 basically just means that she is, they're on serious business, so to speak. So this is all leading up to the fact that she's going to meet with Rand. And I think it's a show of force and a show of power, not only to Rand and to a lesser extent Moiraine as well, but also to other Aes Sedai like Liandrin. They're really showcasing the might. She's flexing her Amyrlin might by having everyone there in one spot at her own whim. I mean, they even brought her throne. Like, that's kind of extra, in my opinion. So I think this whole scene was just to showcase that she has this power. She can do this. She knows Rand is the Dragonborn at this point because Lan has already told her. So she wants to not only be safe, she is also conflicted on what to do with him. Will she follow Tower law and do the things that the Tower says she's supposed to do with the dragon, or will she allow him to have free reign over the world? With the number of Aes Sedai she has with her, it doesn't matter what she chooses because she'll have total control over the situation as long as they're all linked together to shield Rand. Now, this particular scene was pretty interesting because it got to showcase some things that are going to happen in the future for both Nynaeve and Elaine. Now, in this scene, Nynaeve, Elaine, and the Yellow Sister are trying to figure out how to open the Adam. Now, the Adam is a ter'angreal. That's something that's mentioned in this scene, and we got to see a couple of different things. So Elaine intuitively knows a fair bit about them immediately just by channeling at them the tiniest trickle of power. That's because Elaine has a talent for making ter'angreal in the books, and we get to see that later on. They're not perfect at first, but with a lot of practice, she does make some really useful ones much later on in the book series. And the Adam is no exception to that. Now, with that being said, we also get to see Nynaeve talking about it needs to be healed. It needs to be whole. So Nynaeve is using her ability or her talents to delve and figuring out just a little bit about the Adam that way. And it's sort of a slight call out, I think, to what some of the feats she does much later on in the book series that require that. And there's been a number of instances so far in the series where they've had small little tidbits of the power around Nynaeve that call out to two major, very, very major instances of the books where she's involved in, which I won't get into here, even though I gave full book spoilers. I'm not going to talk about them, but I think this is just another little hint to that. That and the fact that she can't control her power. It's a big burst of power, and she is, or she will feel like she's indirectly responsible for the capture of the Yellow Sister and the murder of her warder. Finally, we get to see Egwene break on screen. It does not get easier anytime you watch it. I've watched this a number of different times. And she actually submits to the will of the Seanchan and no longer thinks the pitcher's a weapon and is actually able to pour the water. This happens to a certain extent in the book series as well. But basically, it just shows that at this point, she's maybe not totally broken, but she is broken because they just beat her down. Now, in the book series, she was held captive for over 2 months with the Seanchan in the kennels before she was rescued. And the timelines in the show are a little wonky in the fact that we really don't know which days and which things are happening. There's x-ray material and there's different things like that that give slight clues as to where things are fitting in the timelines, but they don't seem to match up, especially with some of the traveling and things that are going on. So we really don't know how long she's been captured just yet, but I would suspect a very long time to break Egwene, just like in the book series.